and you can see it like a game. So you have a life coach, and your goal is never to go down to zero. And when you do a project like a tech overhaul, you might have bugs, you might have regressions. I mean, you're redoing the full platform stack.
Yeah.
And so design is there as life points.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Excuse My SaaS, the podcast where we talk about how value-centric tech products are turning into valuable businesses. Powered by ProdCamp, your revenue-centric user feedback platform, today's episode is one I'm really looking forward to. Why? Because we're going to tackle a topic that became a kind of catch-all for most product growth problems, the infamous UX redesign. And joining me today is Claire Van de Voorde, an incredible product coach and freelance chief product officer with over 10 years of experience leading B2B SaaS transformations. We decided on today's topic after a fun exchange at B2B Rocks in Paris about a redesign I mentioned for ProdCamp, and Claire had some strong opinions. She's not afraid to say that a UX redesign is often an overkill solution or just a miss. So today we're going to break down why a UX redesign might not fix your product, how you could look at things instead, and we'll also get into some tactical advice on how to make your product efforts truly effective and focus on where they're needed. Let's jump into it. Claire, welcome to the show. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Matei. Happy to be there. And as you say, I'm working on B2B transformations with a product hat. So usually it involves tech, and I see more and more often some full UX redesigns. And so as you know, I have some strong opinions against UX redesign in absolute.
Love it. Let's go, Claire. And let's get started with the big picture, maybe. You mentioned before that UX redesigns are often seen as quick fix when a product has issues. Why do you think they are treated like this? And what makes redesigns an overkill in many cases?
Well, I see it really like when you do a full company rebranding. So it's something that may happen like every 3 years. It provides a huge visibility, but most of the time it doesn't fix the root issue. And so when you're speaking about UX, usually you have some ergonomy issues. And instead, I think people should always go back to the root causes. And maybe this full redesign is like 10 different root causes that you could fix differently. And by fixing them one by one, you can measure the impact that each of them has. And so you can go more quickly and also really improve how you treat the redesign and how long it takes. For instance, I worked with a company that had an issue in a subscription flow. And so what they were saying is, okay, we need to redo the full subscription flow. It's too long. People don't go up to the end. And when we started deep diving into it, we realized that what was really missing is showcasing all the products on one page, because you had to subscribe to one and then redo the flow every time you wanted to add a product. And so that was an easy fix, like edit one page, display the full products, let people select multiple ones, and there you go. And so this full redesign that was envisioned was completely an overkill compared to the time it took to just redo that page, like 2 weeks compared to a couple of months.
Love it. Really interesting. So tactical changes are often the answer and not necessarily big changes. And you can, by finding the root problem, make these changes in a frictionless way, right?
Yes, at least it's the first thing to test before you ensuring you need to redo the full flow. I'm really speaking about UX. So for instance, if you need to redo and implement a design system, then it's a full UI redesign. So here we just focus on UX part.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now from your experience, when a redesign is truly necessary, are there specific signs that indicate a full redesign is actually the right choice?
Yeah, for me, on top of the design team starting to complain, because they're usually the first one to see it, you can have factual metrics by seeing the number of support tickets. So if you start categorizing them and seeing that you have more and more people not understanding how to use the product, if you have your onboarding time that are going longer and longer, this can be both customer onboarding that you usually look at, but also internal onboarding. So if when someone arrives, you start saying, oh, it takes up to 9 months to master our product. Yeah. These are usually signs that you have complexity that has grown big and bold. So these are some first signs you can see. If you've missed them, you will have late signs like public complaints, churn, and overall satisfaction that goes down. But that's a bit later usually. So if you can catch up the first signs, it's always better.
Yeah. Great. So you've worked with many teams who dive into redesigns, right? Usually led by tech teams, but that include a full UX redesign. So what are the major redesign failures or risks you've seen there?
Yeah, so as you say, most of the time, so there's a full tech overhaul. And so we say, as we need to change the full technology, we might as well change the full product. And the most risky way for me to do it is what I call a big bang. So it's, okay, let's redo our product. We'll do a full brand new product that will launch is 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, pick your time. And so the team starts building a completely new product, completely new experience on the side, and then plan to migrate all the customer to this new one. You have major risks both during the redesign because so you're taking a lot of bets at the same time. The more you do a redesign, the longer it takes. So you usually stop moving on the market during that time. So if you start having a redesign that's more than 6 months, it means that there is no news brought out to the market during that time. And worst of it is at the end, if you cannot switch customers. And that's something that happens way more than people admit, that they have these full new products. It's easy to move the easy small customers in B2B. And when you start having the big ones, the ones that do the most of your annual revenue, then you find a blocker because, you get stuck. They need more things. They need to keep the redesign going to bring back the complexity that they needed, and then you're stuck. And so, like, for instance, last week, I was speaking with a major editor. So they had a new tech team that arrived and that created a full new platform. This was 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And they now have two platforms living side by side. One
that they
for
have to
small
maintain.
customers.
Yeah, right.
That's an easy one. And one for big customers that they could not switch. So they doubled their maintenance fee by creating a platform for small customers that are not even their main target.
Right.
And that's a major risk for me when we start this full redesign as a byproduct by another team, usually on the side.
Right. Really interesting. Really great examples. So what red flags or symptoms maybe should product team look out to prioritize their redesign wishes? What are the criteria as a signal?
Yeah. So I always want to say what we always do in product, but I don't know why when we speak about redesign, it's forgotten, which is go back and start from the pain. What are the business pain? What are the customer pain you're trying to address?
Right.
And don't try to aggregate them and create a big, bold solution that is a redesign, but tackle the pain one by one, prioritize them, and see which ones you have to do. And also see if design really is the only solution. Once you have them individually, sometimes more human support, for instance, or service, is a better way to tackle it. And of course, when we are building a SaaS and building product, developing tools and improving features is the obvious way to go, which doesn't mean it's the one that brings the most revenue or the more ROI. And sometimes you should just kill the feature and not try to improve it because it just doesn't bring enough value. And so there's a real question here is, what do we want to do? Do we really want to redesign it? And if so, then you can prioritize the different ones you want to redesign, recut it down into chunks, and be sure that the first thing you're going to do is the one that will have the most impact. Maybe you don't have to redo the full page and you just have to add these small products in 1/3 of the page just to test and see if the solution works. And beware, because when you're working with design is so visual that it's really easy to have all internal stakeholders and partners really enthusiastic about
rave about it. Yeah.
And so the more you display full screens and final designs, the tougher it is later on to say, well, we decided to just do 1/3 because we've reached our business impact.
Right.
And so the more you can stay into the facts mode, the easier it is, and the easier you put the designs, the harder it is then to really go back to reason, I want to say.
So focus on small elements, slice the elephants. Elephants are harder to eat in one bite. I love it. So can you share maybe a couple of examples where small UX tweaks had a significant impact and full redesign wasn't needed at all?
Yeah. So at the beginning of last year, I was working with a fitness app. And so basically they had a device that you could use standing or lying down. And if you used it standing, you would have been jumping and that kind of thing. And so you could lose it. It could just fall back on the floor.
Mm.
And so they were, okay, we have an issue. We need to help people place the device correctly. And so let's put a bit everywhere in the app instructions about how to use it, where to use it, improve the onboarding of each new feature and that kind of thing. So it was about to be everywhere in the product.
Mm.
And after, again, diving into it, we went back to, you could use it standing or lying down. And we realized that most people didn't knew that lying down was an option.
Mm.
And so the first thing we tried was to say, okay, during the onboarding of users, we'll just add a screen that states you could be standing or lying down. Maybe when you start lying down. And once you master it, you can go to a more advanced level and stand up.
Understand.
And see how it works. And it seems really basic, but it, of course, so it changed and we didn't do the full redesign of the app later on. But it went back for the fact that, okay, there are 2 positions and we never advertised it. And I think it's really something where we went from months of development to one test that changed both how people use it and also how the product was marketed, because we changed really the onboarding part and we introduced that level idea that you start lying and then when you succeed in being up, it's a success. While before, people were up and losing the device. And so it was seen as a failure.
Yeah.
While now we reverted it. And so it's a success when it works and not a failure when it doesn't.
Love it. It's really, really great example. So when a team is actually, set on redesigns, because that's going to happen often, how do you help them reframe the problem instead and explore alternative solutions? What steps, tools, the tactics do you use to uncover the true underlying issue we talked about?
Yeah, so you spoke about an elephant. It's, of course, an idea I take from my freelance mate, Sylvain Cabot, but it's basically the idea of, okay, let's assume you have this idea. Because I know you have it, you've designed it. So let's start with what you have and we'll cut that down into pieces instead of going out with a full blank page and ignoring all the work you've done. And we'll take this idea and you'll explain me step by step why you decided to change it. And most of the time so we speak about instincts, but it's based on facts. And so we can cut it down and be, okay, this is the underlying assumption. This is the assumption from this part of the redesign. And so they are able to cut down their ideas into pieces. And my role is help them cut it down and then find ways to validate part of the hypothesis. Like if I go back to this lying down or being up. So there's one big hypothesis no one is speaking about is being up is crucial for using this device. And that's why we're explaining everyone why they have to be up and how to keep the device. And so when we're starting discussing, okay, do they really need to be up? That's when, so it was a medical device. And that's when the medical team was, no, actually, you can do it lying down or even sitting. And so we went back, we took the elephants, put the hypothesis, and then tried to invalidate each of them. And this was one big that was invalidated. Sometimes you cannot invalidate the big ones, but there are still small ones that you can remove step by step. And so you can switch a bit the solution from your ideal idea to what truly matters based on this hypothesis. And you can even find more ideas based on this hypothesis, being, okay, I have this hypothesis that I don't have to be up. Okay, then now what can we do? Right. We can still put everywhere in the app that you could be lying down, or we could say it's only at the beginning and then you increase in level, or, there are thousands of options, but then you take back these big elephants and you can re-ideate afterwards, but you start from the idea and you assume that people internally did it for a good reason.
Right. And I love that how just having a better look and more clarity on the assumptions could just lead you to this simple, not simplistic, but so simple, effective idea. I think it's a great example actually. Now let's talk about the right approach, the right way to approach the redesigns, and especially, and you talked about it earlier, when it's aimed in tech overhaul. So what are some of the steps teams should follow to make sure the redesign is focused and effective, like we talked about?
Yeah. So when it's embedded in this tech overhaul, so you have an additional constraint, which is you cannot do things whenever you want.
Right.
Because you have roadblocks, you have a technical roadmap. And so you have to align these technical constraints with what you wanted to do in terms of business opportunities and design. And so one key step is to be able to cut down this tech plan into building blocks. I'm always speaking about cutting down into smaller blocks, but that's what helps later on align these smaller blocks. And then for each of these blocks, this is where I can add value. So authentication, maybe a bit, but not too much. If I go back to the next one, onboarding, okay, usually here in terms of redesign, you can do a lot of things. Okay, then first usage, what can I do? And so you start aligning what you can offer with these building blocks. And then there's one key steps, which is deciding what you do and what you don't. When you are in this big tech overhaul, and so you have a roadmap that is a bit fixed, or there's a timeline to respect, I like to use also design as a quick win that can bring value all along this way. And so one element is, okay, where do we bring value? But also, are we sure we bring value continuously? So if you decide you want to bring value every 3 months, okay, what do we have in our design stack that we could include in the roadmap every 3 months? Could be big things, could be really small things, just to be able to communicate overall. And then design becomes a real asset. It's not just, I have a constraint, I have to do a redesign. It's the redesign is the enabler to bring value all along the project. And once you are able to do that, I like to say, okay, so you balance news and speed when you put news and when you want to go faster on the tech overhaul side, and you can see it like a game. So you have a life coach, and your goal is never to go down to zero. And when you do a project like a tech overhaul, you might have bugs, you might have regressions. I mean, you're redoing the full platform stack.
Yeah.
And so design is there as life points. So where do you think you're losing too many points? And so it's time to win back a bit more points. With customers and with internal partners. And then it becomes more like a game of you use design as a really value-adding solution.
So UX is a health potion in your quest game, right? So
exactly. When you do a tech redesign, you should consider it.
Love it. Really, really nice way to articulate it. Great. So we're talking about overhaul and tech overhaul and tech replatforming projects, like this can sometimes become really overly complex. So how can teams, keep the redesign aligned with, and you're speaking about aligning the blocks, right, with their core business goals and the business impact they want to have, and avoid this unnecessary feature bloat or just over design.
I will use a big nasty word for product managers. That is, you have to do project management.
Why?
Which is usually seen as completely opposed and like you're in project or in product mode, but you can't do both. When you're in a big, long project, as you say, which is a tech replatforming, even though you're in a product culture, you do have to manage it like a long project. And so you have budgets and deadlines because investors won't give you millions of dollars to redo the app with a now, next, later roadmap. I've almost never seen it happen. Most of the time, there's a budget and there's a deadline for when this replatforming will end. And so instead of working with, okay, let's ideate and then we'll cost an effort and then we'll put it in the roadmap, I feel like the appetite notion, that is, when you start, how much money am I ready to put into news and all these novelties from the platform, new features? Am I ready to put 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 2 months? And you give that as an input to the team in charge of ideation and in charge of design, so that from the beginning they know the constraints and they can provide innovative options, but that fit into the budget of this constrained roadmap. And so it's a bit the reverse at the beginning, like you start with a project and budget, and then you can switch back to product mode and be, okay, I have these constraints. What ideas can I have? Do I have to do development? Can I do it with a third-party software? Is there an easier way to do it? And so you're back into this ideation mode where solution is not locked. It's just you have a constraint that is budget and up to you to find the best solution.
Love it. Really interesting. You're actually talking about the board and the way they won't validate probably now soon later redesign project. I fully agree with that. And talking about stakeholders in general, and in the context of UX redesign, they often get emotionally invested, and a lot sometimes in the idea of a redesign. And myself as the founder of Prodcam, sometimes I find myself there too. So how do you convince them or me that it might not solve the real issues here?
I think first is keep the energy. So if you go see someone that is full emotional and you say, okay, I give you facts, not the right start. So first say, okay, I agree. I think there are a lot of things that are awesome in this redesign. You also know the budget. Usually stakeholders have a sense of budget. So what are the best parts of this redesign? And it can be both linked to goals. So we spoke about the business goals, aligning it with the pain, that kind of thing. And you can also have some things that are emotionally impactful. Usually it's a home screen because that's where you land on the app. And so there is kind of an emotion because you show the app to friends and you want to show them that you have the nicest.
Something nice. Yes.
And so you can go back to, okay, let's keep maybe this part because it's important emotionally and it will invest everyone in the company because we're still humans. So it's, a cost you pay, but to have people engaged. And for the rest, let's be more rational and then let's cut some pieces of it. And usually that works if you keep that emotion part and work with them to be, okay, we'll keep that. We will not remove it. We're just trying to see if we can start with something smaller. And you can even say, start with something smaller and then we see if we go further. And usually once you've done the small part, it's easier to deprioritize the rest of the project because you've done the biggest part and there are new emergencies emerging. And so everyone will agree that maybe we can go
move
to the
on.
next step. And these other ideas are still there. Maybe we will keep one per month.
Yeah.
It's our life coach, it's our health potion. So if at one time we need it, it's there. We can pick it, but we don't have to do it all right now.
Love it. Really interesting. And so now, if we take the side where you actually have to commit or you're going toward committing to a full redesign, what steps do you recommend teams take to actually validate the problem space and make sure they are addressing the right thing? So we talked about now the way you could be more targeted in the changes, but maybe there is a way to make sure that in the context of a full redesign, we are addressing the right things.
Yeah, so if you validated the full redesign, then it's a matter of prioritization. With what do you want to start? One way is to go up to business metrics or metrics you want to target. I like Gibson model, ex-Netflix had a model called GEM, where it's, do you want to prioritize growth? And so new customers, new segments. Do you want to prioritize monetization, ROI? Is your product profitable? Or do you want to go for satisfaction? One key mistake for me is that most of the time, when we do a redesign, we only focus on satisfaction and user satisfaction. And this is kind of a lagging metrics. You want users satisfied for them to renew. Or or to get more customers. If they're satisfied but don't pay, actually no one is happy in the company.
Exactly.
And so go back to, okay, I have this redesign. Do I have things in it that will improve my growth or my monetization? And which one is the top company priority? And so you have this redesign, but you tie it to a bigger business problem and business opportunity. And as you say, you also cut it down and ensure that you tackle the right one. But one way of prioritizing it is to get out of this satisfaction trap, because for me, it can really become a trap, and go back to other business metrics that will help you pilot this redesign with another angle.
Right, and move the business needle. So I love that. I think you're right that customer satisfaction is not only a lagging metric, but it's not a business metric. It doesn't have a direct impact on business. So we are often focusing on that despite this reality.
You should check it, right? Let's agree. It's not something that you should trash it, but it's a lagging metric.
Absolutely. We agree. We align here. So maybe an example, you have an example of, a step-by-step redesign you've seen recently succeed or you maybe take part in. Do you have an example?
Yeah, actually, I worked on a quite specific project because sometimes people tell me my company is too specific. We're too complex. We won't make it. And so I think in the complex part, it's one of the toughest I've seen. So it's a voting company. Internet voting. So it was used in France, for instance, when you had to vote for a big vote, major vote from the state. Mm-hmm. So I'm not speaking about a small vote about do you want to improve whatever in your building. I'm speaking about a vote that I need to have huge security where you're deploying the vote machines on servers that have the highest level of security that can't take fire. Mm-hmm. That kind of vote. And so they needed to redo part of the technology. One of the big pain being that, so it was put on dedicated servers. And so customers could do nothing. So it was only the expert team that could go and program the servers and prepare the vote.
Okay.
And the key element the key element they could crack was, okay, actually, we don't need security all along the way. So we need full security during the vote. And that is something we cannot change.
Mm-hmm.
But while we prepare the vote, like when we pick the dates or that kind of thing, we don't need that much security. So we can be on secured servers, but maybe on a SaaS. And so if it's on a SaaS, a customer can use it and can basically write a brief, and then we log the brief before sending it to the server. And so we keep all this tight server security for the voting itself, but we can create a system that brings value to the customer on its own.
Nice.
And so
in a more simple way, right?
Yeah.
Like less effort.
So that was the big first hypothesis. And when you start saying, okay, actually I'm building a SaaS, it's way less expensive and you can update it when you want and all that thing. And we decided, okay, the first thing we need to validate is that these users are willing to set up their election, because we all think that they need to have a hand on it. But let's just do an account creation where they can come in, create an account, and maybe, I don't know, pick dates or something really dumb about the election. And we don't change the rest. Luckily, in that case, it's a success, we said. So they did the servers. They actually even did it in no code, which was completely incredible for that company. So in 2-3 weeks, we had something you can test. And they had 50 new leads and prospects, which is huge for that kind of B2B really specific apps of people willing to try out and so willing to give an email. And so even though the full redesign is still long and is far from being completed, they started with a big win. That is, now we can have leads from the internet with the date of votes. So it's prioritized for sales because they know
when
who's going to
the level of urgency.
First. And so they can also, prepare operations, because if all the votes are in December, they know they might have to scale the teams.
Obviously, yeah.
There are still a lot of things to do, but you cut it down, you kill one part of an hypothesis, and then you can have a way smarter way of doing that than reshaping the full system on a dedicated machine to try to have people externally edit that machine.
Very smart
which
way
in terms
to
of security is tough.
Yeah, really smart way to tackle it, really. So now on the flip side, have you seen, and I'm sure you did, a redesign project that missed the mark, where the main reason they didn't achieve the desired outcome from your perspective, and what maybe could have been done differently there?
Yeah, so personally, I missed 2 in one of my companies.
Okay.
One of them being a big bang, where we create a new product, realized there was no market, and so killed it. But also, so I'm doing conferences about redesigns, and I couldn't find global statistics, but every time I do a poll, so it could be in a 200 people room, so I'm not speaking about 10 people, it's still quite a big number of people, more than half the room have failed at redesign, which is huge.
It's huge, yeah.
So it gives you an idea of the failure rate, even though if they come to the conference, if it was that easy, they would not have come. Most of the time, it's a redesign that was never completed and abandoned, like the one I mentioned in my previous company.
Yeah.
So I started something, or I didn't find my market, or I had an issue with switching customers, for instance.
Right, migrating them,
or worse, there was a business emergency. We couldn't do it on the new product. So we did it on the old ones, and we never went back to the new product. And that's the major part. And the real failure here is, okay, you've stopped it. That could be okay. But if you stop it and you cannot go back into it, then you've just lost a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah.
And hence, the more you can do it, like if you do it step by step to adapt to the market, then you can pause. Then you can say, okay, we've switched block 2 and 3. Suppose we have to do the rest, but we're still in the same product, and we'll go back one day. But these blocks have been migrated. All the customers are on it, and basically they're future-proofed. But the worst is like having to stop it all.
Right. I think that we said it several times during this episode, but I feel like slicing the elephant is kind of the way to go with it and to ensure you don't end up just choking on it. So that's really interesting. Thank you, Claire, for all these stories, example and stuff. We are approaching actually the end of the interview. We have still a couple of questions left. Looking forward, now and maybe reflecting on your experience and all, what advice would you give to product team to build sustainable approach to redesign, and can they, and how can they foster a mindset that diagnoses the root causes and prioritize those problems considering those major redesigns?
Yeah, so the first thing is, as you stated, staying agile and flexible even during a redesign. So it's not because it's a long project that you have end budgets and deadlines that you have to completely miss that part of let's bring value step by step and win points and
Right.
feel that life coach step
Right.
by step the more I'm doing the redesign. So that I demonstrate impact, and even though there are market changes, I have major chances of the redesign to keep going, or at least to be just paused and that start again. And what I like in your question is the sustainable part. That is this part of keep or kill. What do you really need? What do you really need for it to be sustainable? And what are all the extra consumption that you could actually have left aside?
Right.
So let's go back to what are the success KPI of your redesign? Usually it's time to market. Can I ship things frequently? And end of the redesign. How long will it take? If we take that into account, how do you make that redesign just enough of what's needed? And the more you can move forward towards it, I like to put standards, a small standard with teams being, for now, when you have news into the redesign, let's stop speaking about effort. Let's speak about appetite. How much do you want to put into it? And so what's the goal? What's the appetite? Of course, when you're just moving a brick without changing any functionalities and it's budget plus solution. But if it's a news, let's constrain the appetite. And so we're sure that we will get to this right time to market and frequency of shipping. And we have these small nuggets that are the new UX redesign, for instance, options. Right. And we know we can take them. We know it's only 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but basically it's easy to validate that they go into the roadmap.
Nice, really great one. And now maybe, if there were one key question that teams considering a redesign should ask themselves before they commit, what would it be?
Am I really addressing a top priority with this redesign? And I will cheat and add a second one, which is it a minimal viable redesign?
Okay, can you expand a bit on that concept for a second?
Yeah, so we speak about minimal viable product that is, I've addressed my major concern, but with a minimal time to validation. And so it's the same. I've achieved my business goal or the goal of the redesign while having put the minimal resources and having done the minimal changes needed to get it. So
everyone can go away with at least this question if they stay with us till the end of this episode. And that's a wrap for today's one. Claire, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your critical perspective, tactical advice on UX redesigns and beyond. We'll make sure to drop your contact details in the description of this video. If people want to reach out to you and keep talking about UX redesign or other product management topics and hire you, maybe. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe to Excuse My SaaS for more conversations with SaaS experts and tell your friends about us. See you soon. And meanwhile, keep discovering and building product for impact. Thank you so much, Claire.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to continue this conversation we started.
Great. Have a good day.